All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the panel on ESG. This is ESG is an acronym. E stands for environment, which is how a company's activities impact the environment through direct operation. And this is very important, and across the supply chains. S stands for social, how a company manages relationship with its employees, suppliers, customers, and this is very important, and communities. G for governance. How the hell do I trust the company and the board? So how do you handle executive compensation, internal controls, shareholder rights, the transparency, and so on? So that's the ESG. And I'm super excited about the panel discussion today because of three reasons. A, you heard from Sam Pitroda this morning that after pandemic, two things have become very important for the world: planet and the people. And that's what E and S stands for. And G just makes sure that you are doing the right things, you are adhering to what you have promised. And and also a related topic, and there are DEI and HR specialists here on the panel. They will talk about this, that purpose and meaning at work are becoming of paramount interest. I read in a McKinsey report that 70% of millennials want to work for companies that provide such purpose and meaning. So therefore, ESG is very important if you're doing a startup or you are a CXO of a big company and so on. Second, huge interest in investment in ESG. $45 trillion of assets under management, the AUM, by the end of 2020. And ESG principles may soon represent around 44% of global AUM. And another data I got from the McKinsey, which is that 70% of millennials will invest in ESG. So pay attention. And last but not the least, most importantly, we have an amazing panel with the stellar people for all of us to learn from. They will introduce themselves, but one sentence for each, and I will start alphabetically. So Deepam, until recently, was leading the initiatives within a $2.3 trillion market cap company for helping their worldwide customers in their sustainability journey. Monica is the Senior Vice President of Marketing at Nutanix, who is responsible for many of their DEI initiatives, and she will explain to you. And also make sure as a Chief of Marketing to make sure that all the products, the entire portfolio is geared towards the sustainability for their customers, like the manufacturing companies. Sudhir is our expert in HR, the S of the ESG. Several decades he have been in the HR management, and now he's on the board of National HR Association, and he has helped companies to hire, retain, and provide that purpose and meaning to people. And we have Professor Swasti Gupta Mukherjee, who teaches people like us at business school about finance and ESG. Like to mention that she got a prestigious award, Ideas for Teaching, by Aspen Institute for designing and delivering a course titled Finance for a Sustainable World. He couldn't have found another person for this, better person for this panel. And lastly, and least, let me introduce myself. My name is Ashis Khan. I'm CEO of UnifyTwin, an IoT Industry 5.0 startup. You heard today many companies in Silicon Valley are helping to improve the productivity and experience of the desktop workers. Our focus is frontline connected workers in manufacturing, construction, energy, etc. And we empower them with digital workflow and no-code apps enriched with contextualized insights from IT, OT, IoT, digital twin, carbon emissions, etc. data, so that they can reach their twin goals of productivity and sustainability. And I've been in Silicon Valley for 3 decades, and I'm an alum of IIT Kharagpur. Thank you. And I will now request you to introduce yourself. So you can go in alphabetical order again. So it'll be start with Deepam. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Ashis. Great to be on this panel. I'll keep this really short. As Ashis said, I have been fortunate to be part of Microsoft sustainability strategy. I was leading sustainability and AI strategy. My background, and that's where I like to focus, probably add some perspective. I come to this space more from a data and AI background. My experience before Microsoft comes from doing a lot of startups. I was fortunate to have started several companies. I created a platform called Venture Factory. By background, I have been in and out of the corporate world with over 6 to 7 startups, 2 of which have been in sustainability area. And I'm happy to say one of them, one of the leading waste to energy companies based out of India, called Green Power Systems, which has also won a lot of global awards, and also another startup in last mile logistics and green transportation. Most recently, I've been focused in Microsoft's journey to help build a Microsoft Cloud for sustainability and to help take what lessons we've learned from Microsoft's own leadership experience in helping the rest of the world to accelerate its sustainability journey. And on a lighter note, I am part of the original IITK, the IIT Kanpur, and probably the best one of the lot. So nice to be here. Ashish.
Monica, go ahead. Right?
Yeah, hi everyone. Again, Ashis, so nice to be here, and thank you for the great introduction here. My name is Monica Kumar. I'm SVP of Marketing and Cloud Go-to-Market at Nutanix. Been in tech for about 28 years. And I was telling Ashish earlier, I remember working and being a champion for DEI before it was called DEI. So I've been involved in women in leadership since 1992 in many different forms, personally through the network, but also professionally at work. While I was at Oracle, now I was very heavily involved with the HR team and with the women's special interest group there. But today I'm at Nutanix, 3 years into it, and I'm proud to say our CEO, Rajiv Ramaswamy, who I believe is an IIT alum, I'm not sure, but I think he is. And Rajiv has a huge focus in DEI. And I'm so appreciative that at the leadership level, we are walking the talk, right? I mean, to me, this is a topic that's so near and dear to my heart as a mother, as a leader. You know, we can't, as corporations, use up all the resources in the world and feast on it, and then leave famine for our children and for the rest of the world in the future generations. So yes, profitability is super important. And there are studies that show the profitability aspects of ESG. But to me, this is an imperative. This is something that's a responsibility as human beings, as members of the community, to make sure we are socially and environmentally responsible. And I'm really happy to talk more about that, as we go through this panel.
Sudhir, right? Yeah. SU, and then
All right. No, that was pretty accurate, Ashish. SU and then SW. So first of all, I'm very excited to be here and very grateful that I got this opportunity to share my experiences with the audience today and the panel as well. I am an industrial engineer from IIT Roorkee. I have over 20 years of multifaceted experience across industries and functions. I actually started my career with manufacturing, and that was my first exposure to ESG. While it was way back in 90s, but then we were manufacturing automobiles. And as part of that, of course, had huge requirements on environmental aspects, as well as doing a lot of stuff on the social aspects. I started my career with iSure, actually, which was really known for its efforts on building some of those social structures within the organization. So that was great. And then from a governance perspective, also got very early inroads and exposure into what real good governance means. I also worked with advertising industry then, which is of course diametrically opposite. But then again, looking at all these things from a consumer perspective, like, how do we behave in a sustainable and responsible manner while messaging to the customers, to the consumers, and how do we make sure that we are not approaching any kind of messaging in an unsustainable manner. And then eventually for the last many years, I have been with the high-tech industry, mostly with enterprise SaaS software, mostly in the HR function. So in addition to that, I also own my own consulting business for 5 years. and work with some marquee clients like GE. And that was another great experience I had around how larger organizations consider the ESG agenda. So that was really wonderful learning at that point in time. As I said, and you also mentioned, Ashish, I have been leading human resources for almost a couple of decades now. And, one of the reasons I'm here is my passion for ESG, and HR actually provides so much opportunity to really further this agenda within the organization and across the society as well. So I really love the combination of the two. I, of course, want to share a lot. I'm very enthusiastic, but I'll wait for my turn eventually to come to that and talk about those things.
Absolutely. Swasti, go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm Swasti Gupta Mukherjee. So I am, like Ashish said, I am sort of the odd one out here in the sense that I am primarily an academic. However, I like thinking that I wear various different hats. The great thing about today's panel is all of us get to wear the same hat, which is as global citizens who have a social contract with the world. So I'm really happy to be part of this panel, glad to be invited. There's always something cool about the Bay Area, whether it's virtual or in person. So I'm happy to attend even virtually. As far as my educational background is concerned, I am from IIT Kharagpur. I did chemical engineering. Then actually my background is not so uncommon in the sense that it went from engineering to finance, but it is uncommon in the sense that I directly went from chemical engineering bachelor's to a finance PhD degree. In that regard, it could have gone very, very wrong in the sense that I figured out that I'm in the wrong field. But thankfully, that did not happen. I fell in love with it. I loved the issues we were tackling. I did my PhD from Georgia Tech. Another way of thinking about it, which I tease my husband about, who's also from IIT Kharagpur, is that I got too bored by being in an area which was dominated by Indian males. And rather than that, I would be in an area which is dominated by white males, right? So finance, academia is not really that different from Wall Street. It's pretty much the same. Again, like Wall Street, we are evolving, we're changing. Increasingly diverse, thought leaders are coming into the space. As far as my relationship with ESG, it has been an ongoing process of basically getting increasingly passionate about these issues. Finance is definitely not seen as an area which is traditionally a cheerleader of ESG. It's widely known. It is largely resistant. And even today, it is resistant to a lot of ideas coming out of the ESG space. So as an academic, as a thought leader, teacher, researcher, I am particularly passionate about making finance and sustainability intersections and the compatibility and the synergies accessible for everybody. So basically make the finance and the business case, which I believe is my expertise area, to make the case for greater good, right? So that's one of my passions. As far as my involvement in other activities, I'm an active investor as well. So apart from being an academic, I definitely pay a lot of attention and due diligence towards sustainable investments because I want to align my personal values and philosophical values, academic values with what I do as an investor. And finally, increasingly, university endowment funds, investment offices are becoming more sustainable investing offices. Likewise, our university actually just a couple of weeks ago announced divestment from fossil fuels as part of a larger carbon offset plan. And I'm part of these various committees and working groups that made these proposals, and it's still ongoing work. So we want to do our bit in all of society effort because a lot of these problems are going to require all of society, all of government efforts on many of these issues. So I'm happy to speak on whatever questions I can contribute to later. Thanks.
Sure. Yeah. My next question is probably we'll start with Monica and then Sudhir and then Deepam is can you give some example, just maybe one or two in these areas? In your case, Monica, is DEI. In your case, please talk about any of the HR initiatives. And Deepam, you have been in the thick of this sustainability, where you felt that you made an impact in the value creation. In other words, needle moved. In other words, to Swasti's point, the CFO can ask, so what did you gain? So if you can give an example, that'll be good. One or two initiatives. Thank you.
Sure. I'm going to quickly get started here. When you think about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, by the way, I think that's very important. I think there's a lot of spotlight on how some progress is being made when it comes to, women specifically. That's where I'm very passionate about. And while that is invigorating, we've seen a lot of promise with the progress. I think we have such a long way to go. We are still a long ways away from equity. So to me, what we need to focus on as a society and corporations and leaders is, let's not blame the pipeline problem here. We don't have a pipeline problem of female talent. Let's be clear about that. We have to go find it. We have to make it accessible for female who are motivated to be in those positions. So to me, how do you do that? And there's certain things we are doing as a company at Nutanix. And number one, it's about identifying the DI champions and defining a clear mission. So, to drive a cultural shift, you have to make sure there's a few champions in the company that can come together. And the first part is getting the right people. Second part is communication. Communication about what is it that your objectives are, right? And how you're going to get there. It's super important. Number two, creating a concrete action plan that's tied to measurement. It's easy to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion. Everybody's doing it. Well, what are you actually doing about it? Be very concrete. You can think big, but start small. So it is providing your champions also with the air cover. I think it's really important the executives do that. Number three is about communicating the importance to all of your employees and what your mission is, what the action plan is, how you're going to measure it across what time frame. And then number four is really speaking through action and just small things like, focusing on hiring, but also retaining, promoting, the right talent and promoting diversity. Examples, what I do all the time is when I look at a list of speakers in a conference, where are the women? Why is it 90, 95, 100% men? Let's make sure we get the right women there. And by the way, we don't want handouts. There's this thing like, only if she is capable, then let's get her. Of course. I think that's not even the question. It's really about making sure that somebody speaks up and says, hey, where are you? That's one. Second example, very quick, is investment. I think, Swasti, you mentioned, I'm also part of a fund called NATE3 Futures Fund now. We just launched a 10 million first round. We just closed literally in a record time. And that fund is 95% South Asian women LPs for the first time ever. And we're going to invest in companies that have at least one diverse, leader, either in the company or in the board or, in the leadership team. And to me, those are actions that, people like us need to take to show that we actually mean it, that we're going to create an, equitable world out there when it comes to, in this case, obviously it's gender that I'm talking about.
Very nice. Very nice. Thank you. Sudhir, you want to go next about a particular initiative that you created, you feel like you created value and, is somewhat measurable and so on?
Sure, no, absolutely. And very powerful examples from Monica. So thank you so much for sharing those. Actually, I fully agree with you that, CFOs have been kind of, I won't say anti-ESG, but they have been kind of resistant. And I don't want to, of course, take the thunder away from what Swasti has to say about that. But one thing is for sure that CFOs are realizing that ESG is here to stay and they will have to align. So they are also now more willing to find out ways in terms of how we can leverage some of these initiatives. So my example that I'll pick up is mostly around creating that alignment with the CFO to see how we can bring the cost down overall for the organization using some of the ESG principles. And one of the things is, the amount of money that is spent in training people on ESG aspects in terms of like what is ESG, how do we comply with that, and how do we create that framework is huge. And we were actually, in most of the organizations, spending a lot of money around that. So, I really looked at shifting the focus from training to hiring. I said, can we include that as part of our hiring process, where we pick up people who already have an ESG positive mindset? So they might not know the technicalities, but their mindset is more sustainable. And when they come into the organization, they are naturally inclined to follow some of these practices. And therefore, the overall effort that the organization requires is much lesser in terms of training, in terms of making them adhere to some of these frameworks, and even any issues occurring from non-compliance. So essentially, CFO could very easily see the net impact on the bottom line and became a lot more favorable. And this is not just one organization. I am talking about multiple organizations that I use this strategy in.
Okay, thank you. And Deepam, you have done a lot of sustainability work. Recently, I read Unilever, for example, improved they reduced their cost in an ice cream plant using a lot of data and AI by 82% while improving on or reducing the carbon emissions for 42%. And these are common examples. In other words, they are not against each other. Would you be able to share something that you were involved and helped the needle on the CFO measured way?
Sure. So firstly, let me say I'll try to focus on the environmental side only. That's been my experience.
Yes.
Second, I also want to tailor my response to those in the audience who are innovators, entrepreneurs, or business leaders who want to create value, economic value, in addition to doing good. So that's, I'm sure the rest of the panelists will add other perspectives as well. So in that context, the one message, if I have to leave everybody with recent now more than any time else in my experience, sustainability is a data and AI play. And in fact, the entire focus, that the reason I joined Microsoft also, they had to set up a unique group which was titled Data and Sustainability, AI and Sustainability. And there is no other way to address the challenge without applying these types of big data and AI tools in the scale of the problem that we are trying to deal with. The example of Unilever you gave is just one example, but if you look at, I would say there are two sort of examples where I had some involvement, but these are not anything confidential about Microsoft, but in general, people know these. One, I would say, is in the area of supply chain optimization, which is a huge, massive problem. Everybody is reading about it. It's because of COVID and many geopolitical issues. It has become front and center. But sustainability as a driver for both in terms of resilient supply chain, of managing your supply base and your understanding how to report your sustainability as a product differentiating output to your consumers, like Unilever, for them to be able to show their consumers that their products are greener than others, is a sustainable differentiator. And to make this happen is a gigantic data and AI problem today. More and more, we find, like, for example, 44% of Fortune 500 CEOs have declared adherence to net zero objectives, but only about 13 to 14% actually have a plan to get there, which means data is the biggest problem. And for entrepreneurs and for large execs alike, it's a serious innovation challenge. So that's one area that we we've had a lot of progress, but we're just still scratching the surface. But we're starting to see application of the usual concepts that you talk about: data lakes, data automation, application of artificial intelligence and other kinds of AI-led optimization, leading to both the reporting, the reviewing, the reduction and replacement of carbon and inefficiencies from the system. So that's one of the big things that we've talked about. And if I can slip in one more, I would say from an entrepreneur's perspective, before this, I actually spent 8 years of my life. I went and raised a $20 million fund to set up primarily a double bottom line venture fund for global impact, which is where we set up these startups, one of which I pointed out earlier. And the lesson I've got from those experiences is that not everything that shines out there is great for our startup entrepreneurs to go after, but there are lots of opportunities buried in there. We've seen profitable success from sustainability-focused startups, even in a country like India, where a lot of people will argue the spends and investments are low, but the opportunities are really emerging. And I would say I'm investing myself. I'm more bullish than I've ever been, and be happy to talk to entrepreneurs and startups who are looking for insights and collaboration. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate that. As a matter of fact, I think in CNBC yesterday, Larry Fink from BlackRock said that next 1,000 unicorns, like Monica's Nutanix type of companies, will come in those areas, ESG related areas like the clean energies and so on and so forth. So Swasti, this is a tricky thing all the time. Let's say I'm a VP of engineering, I'm a VP of strategy, and I have this, I want to do these initiatives because I see that my products, if they are sustainable, they can add a lot of value. There is a sizable audience that would like to buy my product, but at the same time, as you said, the CFOs, obviously, they're looking through and rightfully, the lens of the EBITDA and the ROI, the profit, etc. Give us some ideas, that if I want to convince my CFO, how do I do that? That yes, ESG initiatives are in fact give you return on investment.
So let me address what I see as sort of at a very macro level, the biggest challenges facing this space right now. The challenge is coming from the mindset. The mindset that we still predominantly see as of now is that ESG is a cost. We are doing ESG to make somebody else happy. In most cases, the government, the big bag, the big brother is watching you, that kind of stuff, right? We are thinking of ESG as compliance. We are thinking of ESG as crisis management. So, BP goes and does an oil spill, and we're thinking of that framework as, okay, now they have to care about ESG because they have to show people that they did not actually damage the, ecosystem in the ocean. So that is the mindset that we have to transition out of, because I firmly believe, and there's a lot of data coming in showing this, that the next wave, the next century of the big businesses, the legendary businesses, the most influential firms of the next century, they are not going to be firms which have ESG initiatives or departments. They are going to be firms where their business model has an ESG problem baked into it. They are trying to solve big global challenges because, from the business perspective, as an academic or an observer, the largest global challenges are also the world's largest market opportunities. So more and more entrepreneurs will look at those large global challenges, which could be climate change or hunger, public health, various different things. And a lot of such entrepreneurs are present in today's conference. And as a result, that social impact, that environmental impact, it will be an organic part of the business to begin with. And once it is organic part of the business, then the financial impact, economic value, and the social and environmental impact, they're all coming together. They're not disconnected from each other, right? And that is the mindset that really is going to be transformational, and it has to be scaled up as quickly as possible because we are already behind on a lot of these issues.
Okay, so you're saying the mindset change and it is going on, in your opinion, right? And you are contributing by doing this course that you got an award for. I hope that's
yeah.
Right?
And just to reiterate, the reason why I'm particularly gratified with this award for the course is it is intentionally designed as an intro to finance course. I firmly believe that we have to start. It has to be foundational. It cannot be something where we are teaching our future business leaders or current business leaders in the business school that, only care about profits and forget everything else. The short-term mindset to unlearn later is far harder than to develop that mindset starting from the classroom.
Yeah, Deepam, go ahead.
If I can just add to Swasti's point, I would say, interestingly, in the last 12 months, 7 or 8 out of 10 conversations I would have had is not with the CFO or the chief legal officers or the chief HR officers, which were the leaders usually in the C-suite talking about ESG broadly. We've been having conversations with product leaders, with the CEO and digital officers. This has now become a C-suite conversation. And in that also, I see it's a very clear mandate on product differentiation, which is driving immediate spend. I think there's a lot of greenwashing for sure. More than 90% companies, for example, in the United States are reporting on ESG, but the carbon impact has not shifted, which means there's a lot more greenwashing and hype than actual in spending. But where the spending is happening, other than the reporting and regulatory side, which is obviously a huge part, is on product innovation and product differentiation. And I would certainly encourage those who have not paid attention to the environmental impacts, that product lifecycle assessment, green product design, things like the Amazon-led Climate Pledge Initiative and many other product-based in investments, which is what's moving the needle at this point of time. It's easier to convince the CFO and the CEO if you're focused on those areas.
Yeah, and can I add one thing to Ashish? I think what Swasti said really resonates with me so much. It is a culture shift that we're talking about, right? Because over and over again in pockets in research, it has been proven that environmental, social impacts actually have a better ROI and make businesses more profitable. Even the current businesses where this is an add-on, it's not their core businesses. Right. You're saying it will be a new wave of the future. Even then, so I think you're right. The conversation is moving now away from it being a cost center to actually it's a benefit. And in fact, if companies don't incorporate it in their messaging, I think they're going to be left out. They're going to be left behind because more and more everybody's asking for. Customers are asking for this now. Like, hey, what are your ESG initiatives? SEC is asking for it, right? I mean, for public company, it's clear. It's now part of what they're asking for. And secondly, I want to just remind everybody, and including myself, technology is, after all, a means to an end. I mean, we've become so enamored by our day-to-day job that, we need to make it profitable. For what? To make human lives better at the end of the day, right? And like you said, Deepam, you were talking about, we have AI, we have data-driven technologies now to actually assess the impact of what we're doing on the lives. So why aren't we using that, right? I mean, I would encourage all of us to start thinking about what is the impact we are having on other people's lives as a result of the work we're doing. Therefore, your conference is called Purposeful Innovation, right? So I think we just need to come back to that in our heads, making people's lives better. That's why we are in tech.
And just
you're absolutely right. Go ahead, Sudhir. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Deepam said, and Swasti also pointed towards that, there is a hierarchy, right? So at the bottommost is this greenwashing thing where you are doing ESG stuff because you need to comply. And as you climb that ladder, there is a programmatic level. So in the organization, you have a program that you are running to achieve those objectives. Deepam pointed out towards the strategic elements in terms of creating product differentiation. And there's a higher level of, having the sustainability mindset. Now, the challenge is that lower you are in this food chain, the effort is a lot more in terms of, cost and effort, but the returns are lesser. As you keep going higher, your efforts and costs reduce, whereas the returns are more. So the thing is, how do we really accelerate the organization to move up this ladder quickly? Because that is where the CFOs and rest of the C-suite will start seeing that return quickly, right? So start with a very important role out there in terms of not just training, but building that mindset as part of the culture. So culture is not just about the water cooler conversations and making rangolis and having those festivities and things like that. It is about creating a sustainable mindset within that culture where we're able to push these agendas through the entire organization quickly.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And I really like the point that you, Monica, in my previous role in another company, we introduced a lot of this new business model, such as a service business model, which helps with this circular economy type of model, and you waste less and you pay for only that particular service. You don't need to own, and that's the trend. And to another point, I already mentioned that the millennials and Gen Zs are also very interested in having a purpose and meaning in a job. So I think these CFOs will have to pay attention. A related question, I don't have to take much time. It just suddenly reminded me, that you remember that there was that nuclear winter, and the lot of NASDAQ companies collapsed. You guys were probably too young, but it happened in early 2000, and SOX compliance came. The Sarbanes-Oxley, and it required tremendous amount of work. And many companies couldn't go IPO because you are spending like $1 million just to get all this, etc. Is ESG somehow going to add a overhead of too much, or you think that it's a? Well, let me ask you, what do you think, since you are from finance?
So I think there is a transition to that, because at the moment where a lot of the ESG issues are not organic part of the business model, For these kinds of businesses which are developing the whole system or initiatives as an add-on, it could be a cost. However, even if it's a cost, I see it more as a initial sunk cost as opposed to a ongoing large cost, forever, as a perpetual cost. And that's more for existing incumbent businesses. However, new businesses, I think, already see the writing on the wall. They want to solve big problems, many of them. They are developing business models around solving big problems, ESG problems, which they hope to scale up and one day could become, worth billions and billions of dollars of companies, right, which are at a very early stage right now. So those companies, I think, which are organically developing that model are not going to face the same costs as current companies. And a great example of that is fossil fuels. It's much harder for a, very traditional fossil fuel company that has existed for, more than 100 years to suddenly transition into a green company. It's much, much different if you're already starting as a renewable energy company and that's your fundamental business model. So I see it as a sunk cost and also a reducing cost over time.
Very good. Yeah. Monica and Sudhir, maybe you can address this. Let's say I am a VP of engineering in a mid-sized company and I have the responsibility. I have to hire engineers. I have to define, help with the product definition. And, I have many different roles you guys are very familiar with. What will be your advice, starting with Monica, that, hey, Mr. Vice President, let me suggest these 2 or 3 things so that we are a purpose and meaning and ESG reach company.
Yeah, let me just quickly address it from a DEI perspective, and then, the other perspective can come from my other panelists. I would say make sure you're hiring diverse. There are many organizations out there who have access to a female and underrepresented minority, talent pool. So let's just not, peanut butter spread and say, oh, I couldn't find people, I have to hire, very quickly. No, do your homework and hire diverse, because guess what? If you hire diverse, you're going to have more diverse ideas during ideation. Your products will be much better because it has a lot of input into the product, development process. Secondly, promote people from within the organization. That's an ongoing conversation. People need to see role models. I talk to a lot of my engineering counterparts and the women out there, and there are very few of them. I would like, to give that advice. And of course, our VP of engineering knows that because now we have a big DI focus at Nutanix, and we're working very hard to create more leadership within engineering teams. So other women will be attracted to join our company as well. So that would be my 2 very tactical points of advice.
Okay. Sudhir, what do you think?
Yeah, first of all, ESG has to be part of the ongoing dialogue. That's very important, right? So whatever we are discussing within the engineering teams, like a few years back, innovation was kind of that kind of a theme, right? ESG has to now come in, and there has to be on every decision-making process, we have to at least talk about ESG aspects for some time, saying, did we cover it? Did we really consider all aspects? Could we utilize it to make our product better, right? Instead of saying, okay, did we check the box? Did we really leverage that? So that is one practical thing. And if you start doing that, like I was looking at one of the companies that is focused on building security systems. Their every meeting starts with employees talking about what did they do in their own personal lives to enhance the safety for themselves or their families, right? Or their communities. And that brings that focus in the organization. Similarly, I think we have to dialogue around ESG. The other thing is, when it comes to hiring, we have to look at reaching out to more diverse talent pools. So like diversity again is multidimensional, right? So I could have a very diverse pipeline, but it could be coming from not so diverse talent pools. So can I really broaden the pools from where I'm hiring? And at the top end of that funnel, or rather the bottom end of the funnel, where I'm selecting people, I need to be cautious in terms of, am I really focusing on just the gender and ethnicity aspect that is required more for EO reporting and things like that? Or I'm really going broad on that in terms of, am I hiring different generations? Am I hiring different mindsets? Am I hiring different kind of cultural backgrounds and so on? So there is a lot more that needs to happen around that. And last but not the least, like everything has to have some kind of a financial aspect, and Swasti will certainly agree to that. to make it attractive. So if this VP can always then link it back to what's happening on the financial front, have a dashboard and link it. Maybe there's no change happening out there, but it's not difficult to show certain impact over a period of time once we start tracking those.
Very good. Yeah. And my next question, we have another 5 minutes. So my next question, maybe Deepam, since you have a lot of experience, let's say, all these IITians, as you know, are entrepreneurs, and they have been. I am thinking of a startup.
I think we lost Ashis. Deepam, would you want to jump in based on whatever you understood about the question?
Please add thoughts. I'll speak to Ashis separately.
All right.
Go ahead, please.
Ashish, are you back?
Yeah, I am there. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, we lost you. Just trying to define the question for startups, and then we lost you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, a lot of these startups, they like to start with the get-go, with the ESG. What will be Deepam? Deepam? Can you advise? And maybe Swasti, you can also give some ideas because I'm starting anew. You said that they can start from scratch. Therefore, it's not a huge expense if you start from the very beginning, right? So Deepam, Go ahead. What's your advice for the startups?
Yes, I'll say again, it's a broad question, stage-based focus. So if you're a late-stage startup about to go public, or recently in that scheme, you've got to start thinking about all the issues that public companies and reporting companies have, and more Swasti can better address. But what I have been seeing is there's a lot of third-party data now available on every company's sustainability profile. And as companies get public, you are judged by your customers and your investors. And there are more and more stock exchanges, for example, as of now, 68 stock exchanges with 40,000 companies listed on them require reporting. So there is going to be definitely a lot more scrutiny. So you've got to be thinking of getting a materiality assessment done and having a strategy. On the early stage startup side, I would say there are amazing number of data and AI problems. Many of them have existed before, but with sustainability as a differentiator, you can take example, like I said, about supply chain. Supply chain has problems of variety of different optimizations and improvements, but sustainability as an additional area of differentiation to both broad base your supply base, to make sure your suppliers have diversity, they have right reporting types of data that builds longer standing suppliers dependency. And there's very little work yet having been done there. So startups have a lot of opportunity to focus on that. So in the interest of time, I'll keep it short, but happy to have offline conversations.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, people can ask. Nidhi, you appeared. You have. Should I? We have 2 more minutes, and I was just going to pick Swasti's brain, if I may. Is that okay? So, Swasti, why don't you tell us a bit about these startup scenario that we have only 2 more minutes. So, very specifically, if you can think of 2 or 3 things that I am going to do a startup, and the VCs are actually asking these days that what are your ESG principles? Give some advice to that startup.
I would say that pretty much for all the ESG issues right now, there is enough data to say pretty much none of them have a huge negative downside. So as finance, we can certainly show that data. For example, we can debate all we like about how much upside impact is being created by DE initiatives, but at a minimum, we can agree on the data that it does not create a downside. It's not bad for a company. And that itself is a very powerful message to send to your investors, because there is no financial significant downside, and there is a clear positive social impact. So why not do it on the downside? Then just breaking it down into the 2 sides we care about in finance, the upside, right? Next. Clearly, there is more and more evidence that a lot of these issues, ESG issues, have a significant upside, right? So they are creating value, they're creating financial value, economic value, wider social impact. So clearly the upside case is really building momentum, both in Wall Street and otherwise, even among investors, employees, other stakeholders, and we have enough data to say that there is no significant downside. So that itself can be the simple message that can be conveyed pretty much at every level.
Very good. Thank you so much, guys. We had a fascinating time with the experts of ESG. And now I'd like to hand it over to our Nidhi. And it's so nice that she picked up this slogan, right? The purposeful innovation. And we are all talking about purpose and meaning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashis. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Deepam. Thank you, Swasti. Thank you, Sudhir. It was great conversation. ESG is definitely not just for box ticking, and you put it in perspective. Thank you so much for that.